Hello and welcome to HPA-Global Insights, where we'll be interviewing experts from the dietary, supplement, nutritional ingredient, and overall natural health food industry. Please like, subscribe, turn on that little notification bell, and comment below. Now on with the show. Hi, welcome to the show. Today we have a great guest, a friend I've been known for quite a while, David Trosin from NSF. He's the Managing Director of Health Sciences Certification Department.
Jeff, how you doing? Thanks for having me, and I hope everything's going well in Texas with the heat and the pandemic in full swing down there.
Yeah, we're getting hit with it. We're getting messages on our phone about ICU beds being filled up and all that. So more of the same, I guess. Hopefully next year before it was hopefully in 2 months we'll be okay. Then it was hopefully in 6 months, and hopefully, so yeah, we just gotta eat the bitter, as one of my previous guests said, eat the bitter and get this done over with quick as possible. So good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to this. This is a really cool topic. We're going to talk about retailers both on and offline, and how do they protect themselves against selling brands or products that maybe are subpar or could actually get them into some hot water. But first off, let's have a little introduction about what you at everyone pretty much knows NSF, but what are you doing at NSF? The programs that you're involved in. Give us a little intro to that.
Sure. Well, thanks. And again, thanks for having me. It's a real treat to be here and connect, and looking forward to when we can all do that in person in the real near future, hopefully. So at NSF International, I manage our certification programs in our health sciences division. So that traditionally includes our GMP certification for manufacturing facilities, warehouse and distribution facilities around the world. It also includes our product certifications. So our certification that consumers lean on to know that what they're buying is actually in the bottle and that there are no harmful contaminants. And then our Certified for Sport program, which we work with a number of professional athletic organizations. So their athletes and trainers know that when they're buying a sports supplement, that not only they're getting what they're hoping they're getting, but they're also not getting anything that could cause a positive test for a banned substance. And then on top of that, it's been an exciting year because we have launched the new accredited 455 audits that are part of the GRMA. And those include an accredited GMP for dietary supplements, a cosmetic personal care GMP, as well as an over-the-counter drug GMP audit as well. So retailers are looking at those in their supply chain and how they can qualify their store brand suppliers.
Awesome. You just mentioned sports. We're not talking about sports today, but I just thought about it because we had, China did their new 5-year plan, and part of that was a continuing effort to increase sports and fitness among the people. And it's a big push. And one of the things as a business, if you can look to China's 5-year plans, and if they're doing something that you're involved in, it's time to jump on the coattails, because it gets a lot of attention and a lot of money thrown at it. So we're hoping, China's fitness industry is already booming. So we're hoping, as that grows, we're going to see hopefully a sharp increase in sports nutrition in China over time, including, just healthy products in general. So hopefully that'll be some good business there for your NSF team in China.
We hope so. We're looking at China as a key growth market, not only from a sports nutrition standpoint, but just a general supplementation for the general consumer. It's going to be a huge market.
Yeah, I the thing that's really holding it back is regulatory. The regulations in China are very strict and are in the process of being moved, but at a snail's pace. So, cross-border is still going to be the way for most international brands to get in there. But steering off topic here too much. Let's get back to retail space, on and offline. So the pandemic is here. E-commerce, online sales have been huge across, I think, the entire world, really. China, no exception.
Right.
So how how do online, offline retailers protect themselves? I think a lot of this here in the US was kicked off by, Now Foods, doing some independent testing from Amazon products, and some other stories popping around from, box stores. And, so give us a little insight into what NSF is offering and how can retailers protect themselves.
Sure. And I think the history even goes back a little further from to the Eric Schneiderman situation when
Yeah,
he
back
was
in New
testing.
York.
And that's, I think, what originally got it on the retailer radar screen.
Exactly.
To say, all right, there's something here. And CVS initiated their program going on 3+ years now. And so when that happens, of course, other retailers stand up and say, do we need to be on this train or off of it? So, when you look at it, there's a whole spectrum of brands out there. And when you look at the brick and mortar stores, it's a little bit of a different situation. The barrier to entry is significantly higher to get your product on the shelf of a CVS or a Walgreens or even a local grocer with 50 stores, you name it. It's harder. You can't just say, I'm now on your shelf. They will push back. I mean, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And the barrier for entry is much more different for an online marketplace like Amazon. And so when you look at the protection, you look at the environment and maybe why retailers are thinking they would like protection. From Schneiderman, and whether he used the appropriate test methods or not, which he didn't, the message is still out there that there's concern. That's what the retailers hear, especially when he targets those retailers. Mm-hmm. And then you add on top of that, there have been some news stories. A couple that have come out even as recently as this week with Now Foods buying items, and this the second time that I'm aware of that they have done this, where they buy things from Amazon, test them, and say this is the ratio of miss, and the ratio of miss in those products is significant. Mm-hmm. And that gets retailers' attention, it gets consumers' attention. It should. When you look at all of that, that's when the retailers start saying, we need to get ahead of this. We need to make sure we're protecting ourselves. Add to that, outside of industry press, when you start looking at anything from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal, they never seek to paint the dietary supplement industry in I would stop short of saying a positive light, but even a realistic light. You often hear, and we lament this all the time in industry, that you hear mainstream media say it's an unregulated industry, which is certainly not true. It's something that is entirely misrepresented. So when you add mainstream media to that, the retailer who is not from this industry, they're in the retailer industry, they look at that and say, all right, this is something that's on our shelf. We need to take action and protect ourselves. The way they're doing that is initially they did that through audit programs. So they were protecting their own store brand by saying, retailer A will accept an audit from certification body 1, 2, or 3. And that's how we ended up with the GRMA and the 455 audits. Mm-hmm. Is because you'd go out and we would bid on work, say for a retailer in China for an over-the-counter drug facility, and we're bidding for a 3-day audit, and our competitors are saying, well, we can do that in 1 day. And both audits are acceptable to the retailer. Now, I can guarantee you can't do a full drug audit in 1 day. It's you're rushing in 3 days. But if both are acceptable to the retailer, which one is the manufacturer going to go with? They're going to go with the cheaper one that offers less intrusion into their business.
Yes,
absolutely. They're going to do that. That's why we started pushing and saying to the retailers, you've got to get on board. You've got to make sure you're truly protecting yourself, because you're accepting these audits and you're saying that there's the same weight and risk management in the 1-day audit versus the 3-day audit. And that's certainly not the case. And so that's how the whole GRMA and the 455 efforts started, was to say, look, if you could just all get on the same page, then you don't have to worry about all this audit tourism going on, and accept the same audit. And that way An auditor is qualified no matter who you're using, be it NSF or one of our competitors. And the audit duration is going to be the same regardless. And the audit qualification, the audit scope, and then everybody's protected. That should reduce the number of audits and increase the quality, reduce the cost, and overall better serve the industry and from the retailer to their suppliers. And that's where we've come from a GMP standpoint, which is fantastic. But now we're having this from a tests program standpoint with, CVS has their program. I know of, there's talk of a Walgreens program. There's, I've heard at least 3 other retailers that are in final launch phase or initial interest or initial development phase. And I can tell you of several other retailers that are in conversation phase for what their program would look like. It creates a lot of burden on the brands.
I mean, it's
the risk any better.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing we started this conversation talking about the retailers and how can they protect themselves. But, at that point, they put enough armor and shields in front of themselves that they're creating such a high wall of entry, even for the good players that already are investing in their own CGMP and their own safety protocols, for the good players. At what point, does it make it too difficult to do business with some of these companies?
Well, and in defense of the retailer, it's you hear everything from the worst of the worst. They're finding banned substances or drugs in supplements in the real shady players. And then you see, for instance, the Now Food story, and I have a lot of respect for Now Foods and the people over there and their findings. I'm certain their findings are on track, because when we look at our program from our certification standpoint and other retailer programs we worked on, the average fail rate is between, 7.5% to 15%, depending on which program, from a certifications or a retailer program. Now, these are the most recognized brands that are going into, a brick and mortar store, or the brands that are submitting themselves for certification through our program. They're not the bad players. The bad players don't want to go scratching at the surface because they know you're going to find something. So these are the very best players. And there's still a failure rate of close to 10%. And so that's when you look at that. The retailers, I think, have a right and a need to protect themselves at some level. But the fact of the matter is, as an industry, we're all judged in our entirety by the least of us, not by the best of us.
Yep.
And so that's therein is the feeling of the need for protection.
Yeah, well, I mean, those type of regulations, and you can expound upon that to just regular laws for society. Those are all followed by people that want to follow them and want to be good people and citizens of a community or an industry. And then there's always going to be those, players that are going to avoid you at every cost. And, here comes the guy from NSF, and here comes this guy. And, we have no concern or care to work with that group or do anything. We're just going to do our own thing.
We're never going to drive all the bad players out of business, but we can certainly eliminate a lot of their access to the mass consumer. If somebody wants to find something, they're going to go out and find it. The web is a big place.
Well, like I said, the big box stores, especially, I mean, they're more difficult to work with, just in the fact that they won't accept to work with just any old company. I mean, you got to have supply, there's a lot of things as a company you got to have in place to keep up with a demand of a Walmart or a CVS or something like that. So, we're not going to, most likely see those guys, those bad players there, but, not to bash on Amazon, but it's similar in China. They have Taobao. And as long as you have independent sellers on a platform that you don't know who they are, like when I go on Amazon, and I use Amazon, but if I look for supplements, you try to find out who's selling it, and then it's who is this entity? I have no idea who this person is, and they're selling a name brand supplement. So you're adding middlemen maybe they're well intentioned and they're truly doing good business, but you're adding another player to that that is unknown.
Sure. It's, and I think everybody in the equation bears some responsibility here. It's, Amazon certainly bears responsibility, or the retailer. I mean, not just narrowing it down to them, but the retailer bears responsibility for what they're selling.
Mm-hmm.
The brands bear responsibility to make sure that they are living up to not only the laws, but producing good ethical products. The consumer is the one that we don't talk about much, bears responsibility for knowing what the heck is going on, what they're buying and why they're buying it, who they're buying it from. And I think that's the toughest part for us as a whole, as an industry, is, we spend very little time as consumers, at least of these products. I think people probably look more at, the clothes they're going to buy or the food they're going to eat this week than the supplements they're going to take, and researching those. So everybody's bearing a little responsibility. But if you look at it in the retailer requirements, that's one of the things we all have to consider is, it's not a democracy. The retailers are private companies, and being on their shelves is a privilege. It's not a right. And so when they say, we're going to protect ourselves, and we're going to do so by setting the bar here, then that's their right to do so. And that's fine. I think what we need to do then is speak openly as an industry with the retailers, and help everybody comes to say, if this is the bar, then how do we get there in the best, most efficient way that doesn't require a lot of repetition? It doesn't require a brand to do the same thing here, 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 and here. It gets repetitive, it gets expensive, certainly, and it's difficult, and it doesn't necessarily manage the risk any better.
Yeah, exactly. So how does, moving forward, especially a group like Amazon, because it is an online and it does have independent sellers. They also control their own, sell their own stuff. How do we move forward from this? And then also, having a GMP or CGMP certificate, and paying for those, again, those are going to be the companies that want to do the right thing. It's a roadmap showing that this company has, jumped through some hoops, did what they need to do to make sure that their manufacturing practices are in order, and they have their SOPs, they have everything in place to be able to create a good product, quality product. But at the end of the day, you can have all that in place and still throw some junk into your stuff. And like you said, there's some responsibility on the consumer, but it really baffles my mind that people are still buying things that have these outlandish claims, and the targets there are always the sexual enhancement things, weight loss products, and bodybuilding. Those are kind of those three key things. So how you can look at a manufacturer, oh, okay, you have a certificate, you have a GMP thing, but how do you go to that next step and say, well, is the product like what Now Foods did? That gets expensive to be able to testing.
It gets very expensive, and it's I've heard it brought up by a number of brands. We're doing it for this retailer, now we're repeating again for the next and the next and the next. I think Amazon, first of all, the fact that they first announced last December that they were going to put out requirements was a big move. They have kind of remained away for a long time, been apart from everybody else. And the fact that they're also then engaging industry about this is also a big thing. Their initial requirements, I think, are a good start from the standpoint that when you have, for instance, earlier when you mentioned that there are people who are just resellers. So I've been on Amazon, you and I, everybody watching this from industry, we know who the brands are, we know who the players are, and we have that luxury. We go in and type in CoQ10 or fish oil or whatever we're looking for. We say, I know that one. Oh, I know the president of that company. It's a luxury we have. And so I feel very good. I've been in that factory. I know what's going on. And then there's the other, I don't know, if there's 100 pop up, maybe I recognize 10, maybe in some cases 5, sometimes more. But there are often the majority of things that you say, I don't even know who that brand, and it's a great looking label, but I have no clue who they are.
Yeah.
And the only requirement for a great looking label is, access to Photoshop. And so,
and that's sad because, there are a lot of startup companies that are unknown. And like you said, I've been in this industry coming up on 30 years, and, I get messages from my friends in China all the time, like, hey, is this brand really American? Or is this brand, do you know this brand from Europe? Or, and I'm like, yeah, I know that one. That's a decent company. Or sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what that is. But it's sad that there could be some interesting startups. They start up as a small company. They don't have a manufacturing facility, so they're going to use a contract manufacturer to make product for them. And that contract manufacturer is a really solid company making good products, but you just don't know who that company is because they're new and they've just happened to pop up and start selling on Amazon.
Right. Well, that's where, some transparency, comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just because you're small, you're not given forgiveness. It's not like we would ever say, well, you're a new driver, so the speed limit counts only after you've been driving for a few years. Exactly. And then we're going to enforce the speed limit. If you're in this business, you're required to live up to the law, no matter how big or how small you are. So if that's the case, and they've selected a good manufacturer who has a GMP certificate, they may want to enunciate that on their webpage or on their Amazon listing.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about their quality efforts, because there are some just because you're small doesn't mean you're not sophisticated or you're not a good company.
Exactly.
You still have the same requirements as the people who've been in the business for decades and have a much bigger budget. And that's where you've got to talk about that and enunciate.
Yep.
And I think hopefully the Amazon policies will eliminate some of those smaller people who, for instance, I've seen Kirkland supplements on Amazon's website. As far as I know, Costco does not sell their products on another retailer's website. No. I'm certain somebody went to a Costco store when there was a great deal on it was fish oil, as I recall, and bought as much as they possibly could and started reselling it on the Amazon website.
Yeah, and those people are weekend warriors. They could carry, it's like they got the bottle on a $4 off sale, and then they're going to sell it for maybe just $1 under what Costco's selling it, and they profit maybe $2 or something like this.
It's their side hustle. They have no overhead. They don't care. They're just going to, and that's the thing that hopefully the new Amazon policies will eliminate, because those people won't be able to provide a GMP certificate. They won't be able to say this is where it's coming from, and we can attest to the background of this of this item. So
well, even
hopefully it eliminates that.
Yeah, and even if that person is not looking to hurt anyone, and actually is Kirkland fish oil, but he's storing it in his garage at 150 degrees for weeks on end, and then here you go, here's a nice rancid bottle of fish oil for you.
It's exactly the case, and that's where they have every right to get into the business, but you have to know what you're doing, and you have to be sophisticated enough to follow the laws. Even if you're just distributing it, you still have laws you have to follow. So,
and transparency, you hit on that before. Transparency is huge, and it's been interesting to watch over the years, or decades in my case, how companies are starting really have to start opening up, or pulling back the curtain, whereas a lot of things that they did weren't harmful to consumers. It was just business secrets. They didn't want everyone knowing where they were making their products. They weren't hurting anyone. They were good quality products, but it's kind of business secrets. But those things, like in the case of the new player, like I said, that is they're just going to go out and show, hey, this is the contract manufacturer we use, and they're this is where we make our products, and we pick them because they have this, that, and that would have never happened back in the day. No way.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's now a point of pride, to say we're working a good supply chain, and we're willing to disclose that. I think that's a good thing, and that's where it goes back to what's the best way to do this is certainly you don't want it to be punitive to the brands. They shouldn't have to duplicate over and over and over. And at some point, somebody eats that cost, and it won't be the brands for long, because they can only do so much of that. And the retailer's not going to do that. It's going to get passed on to us, the consumer. The best approach, honestly, would be the same approach that NSF started and the GRMA took over, with a harmonized approach that everybody says, all right, we can all sing off of that sheet of music. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly doable. It's absolutely, it can be accomplished. I remember when the GRMA was very conceptual, and we were talking at that time to leadership at Walgreens and saying, if we could just get everybody to do the same thing from an audit perspective. And it was, like I said, it was just the GRMA we hadn't even come up with a name for it at that point. I remember being at an MBJ summit and serving that concept up to a number of important people in the industry. And it was almost as if they just patted me on the shoulder and said, that's really nice. It'll never happen. And that's, I heard that multiple times. It'll never happen. Or that's very altruistic. It's a very noble pursuit. It'll never happen. Well, here we are. It's happened. And we certainly, I think with a massive global player like Amazon throwing their hat in the ring and saying, we are going to get involved and we are going to have requirements, that could lead to some harmonization that everybody could look at and say, all right, we're all going to talk. We're all going to have the same conversation. We're not going to try and create our own special program that everybody duplicates their own special program, because really they're looking for the same thing. They're looking to know, does this have in it what we think is in it? Does it have anything in here that's going to harm anybody? And for those high risk players that you mentioned, and it's the usual suspects, sexual enhancement, weight loss, and some of the higher risk sports nutrition items, do they have anything extra in there that could really cause somebody harm? And there's a way to verify that and not repeat. And it's something that should actually drive up quality, drive out bad players, and drive down cost.
Yeah, well, that's definitely the hope. So I know we'll do another video in the near future, because I know you guys are working on some new stuff to offer the industry, which is exciting when that's ready to go. Supply Side West, we were talking before, you guys will have a booth there. That'll be the first probably show you've been to in a while, right?
Really looking forward to it. Yes, Supply Side West, we will have a booth there. I'll be walking around Supply Side East, but we will have a team out at Supply Side West, and we're really excited about that, getting to see people in person.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully this new variant, we can squash that quickly, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
But we're looking forward to these shows coming up, Expo West next year in the spring, and all the great shows that happen around the world for our industry. It's been a long time, especially for me. I haven't been to a show in quite a while. We've had some shows though. As an association, we've hosted some good shows in China, because their expos were up and running all last year and this year. But with very little international, players taking part in that because of the quarantine issues there. But looking forward to get back to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm right there with you, and around the globe. Missing getting to promote and work on business in the EU, China, but really missing our industry family and friends here in the U.S. Screen time's good, but it's nice to get together in person.
Definitely. So if anyone's going to Supply Side West, NSF will have a booth day. It'll be there. Want to go bend his ear?
Please.
David, thanks so much for joining us today. All the great insights. This is an ongoing issue that, and like I said, I'm glad to see Amazon and throwing their hat in there, and because they're one of the more difficult, I think, pieces of this puzzle, just the way that they're set up. Glad to see that. But again, thanks so much.
Well, Jeff, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the invite to come back. Definitely we'll take you up on that.
All right, David. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to HPA Global Insights. Please like, subscribe, and share with your colleagues. Any questions or suggestions, email us at info@uschinahpa.org. This channel is operated by US China Health Products Association, which is a nonprofit organization. Please consider joining the association and supporting its global endeavors. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, take care.